The parts of a tourniquet are the band or the strap, which should be a minimum of 1.5 inches wide. This is what applies pressure around a limb. Second, we have the routing buckle, which is a plastic loop that the band or strap is actually routed through in on itself in order to apply that pressure around the limb. The windlass is a rod, either plastic or metal, that will be rotated to maximize the amount of pressure that is applied by this tourniquet. The windlass retainer will be a clip of some sort that will keep the windlass from rotating and coming undone and releasing that pressure that's built by the rotation. The time band is simply a hook and loop tab that fits over the windlass retainer and the windlass and offers a space for the user to annotate the time the tourniquet was applied. The first step in stopping bleeding is to identify bleeding. As we all know, blood is red. Arterial bleeding is bright red, and higher pressure, it tends to spurt as indicated on the right side of this figure. Venous bleeding is darker, slower, and tends to pool, as annotated on the left side of this figure. Tourniquets are intended to stop arterial bleeding, but will work for venous bleeding as well. Gloves are recommended anytime you're in contact with somebody else's blood, even if you know the person, so as to avoid any sort of bloodborne pathogens or diseases that can be gained through contact with bodily fluid. Combat application tourniquets come properly staged out of the package. It is imperative that this loop is not undone in the storage of the tourniquet so as to keep it ready at all times. The injured limb simply goes through the loop and above the injury. If a tourniquet is placed below an injury, it simply will not work. In order to properly place the tourniquet, once that band is at least 2 to 3 inches above the wound, brace the area around the windlass and pull as hard as possible on the band. Now, that being said, a lot of people have issues measuring 2 to 3 inches. So for hasty application, it's easier to go higher up on the limb, avoiding joints such as the elbow, the shoulder, or the knee, and it's easier to pull this band towards yourself instead of away. Once that band is pulled tight as possible, the hook and loop backing will secure it to itself. Rotate the windlass until the bleeding stops. 2 to 3 rotations is most common to stop bleeding. However, it's not unrealistic to expect to have to turn a little bit more, and it's not the end of the world. Simply tighten the tourniquet until the bleeding stops. Once the band and windlass are secured as tightly as possible, the windlass will still fit snugly in the retainer. The time strap will also then fit over the retained windlass. Bleeding will have stopped, and the clearest indication is a lack of blood flowing from the wound. Now, with that being said, another way to verify is to feel for a pulse on the limb below the tourniquet, if the limb is still present. If the situation permits, it's also not unfair to annotate the time that's applied so as to assist the higher level of care that the patient will be moving to next. Applying a tourniquet is a very simple action that has been proven to save lives both overseas and at home. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us at primusparatusllc@gmail.com. And if you want to know more of the hows and whys, schedule a class with us and we'll be more than happy to facilitate you or a group that's with you.